I spoke recently on one of my videos about developmental stretching. A couple of people just asking exactly what's the difference, I spoke about it in relation to scoliosis, but I can go into almost any muscle theoretically. So there's different types of stretching. Most stretching that we're used to, maybe at the beginning of a routine, or about we're going to do some exercise, we'll do a little bit of stretching where we're just holding the stretch for about 9 seconds or whatever. And then usually at the end as well, a bit of a cool down, a little bit of a stretch off, but you're just basically stretching, just make sure you don't injure yourself. That's the theory behind it, although sometimes the practice doesn't actually back that up, but anyway, that's another matter. And the idea of that isn't necessarily trying to massively elongate the muscles, you're just trying to stretch them off to get maximum range of motion with them. That's the idea behind it. Developmental stretch is something slightly different. So what can happen in the body for numerous reasons, usually over a long period of time, if we use a muscle in a shortened position, the classic one is chest, bicep maybe, because we spend our lives at a desk or driving, the muscle's physically shorter. So in other words, the sarcomeres, which make up the smallest contractile unit of a muscle called the sarcomere, because you spend this so most of the time in a shortened position, the brain saves energy, it just reduces the muscle into the position that you have it in most of the time, which is great while we're in that position. The issue is when we come to do other things, something goes, something gives. So, in those circumstances, and I used it in scoliosis as one of those, where just doing normal stretching isn't doing, it's better than doing nothing, but it's not necessarily, there's a better way, there's a sensible way, for want of a better expression, of doing the stretch, and that's referred to as developmental stretching. Now, the aim of developmental stretching, so the actual stretching we do depends on what muscles you want stretching. I'm just going to demonstrate the hamstrings in a minute, but it can be for almost any muscle. You're holding it for at least 20 seconds. I used to get phenomenal results with 20 seconds, to be honest. That's why I've got a favour for that. But within getting to yin yoga and all the rest of it, then there's the things where you hold for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, which is great if you've got time within the class. But I used to get good results with 20 seconds. Now not the downside exactly, but let's use the hamstrings as an example. I'm just going to keep this simple. I'll do it to this one. I don't need the ball, don't look at that for. So you want to stretch up the hamstrings, you're stretching over the muscles as well. Your classic one of just taking it forward. Now with developmental stretching, you're sinking into the boundary, so you feel it way out. You're going into that point there. There wants to be some discomfort there. So if you use pain threshold, 0 being nothing, 10 you didn't feel any pain, 10 being agony, you usually have to anywhere between a 5 and a 7. You don't really want to take it much further than that. From a yin point of view, you really just want to go to about a 5, providing you can feel discomfort. Now what will happen is, not just the muscle, this is more connective tissue as well as muscle, but bear in mind there's 30% fascia of a muscle is made up of fascia, so you're still getting the muscle as well technically. You can argue semantics, but so you're after a 5 or a 7, whatever you're going to go for, that's fine. And then you find that the collagen fibers that make up the connective tissue and the muscle itself, they'll realign themselves because they're higgledy-piggledy, the direction that you're pulling them, you're stretching them. So when they realign themselves, there's a little bit more give there, and you usually find that. So you give it an arbitrary score of say 7, that's my personal preference, and then it eases off to a 5, to a 6, to a 4 maybe, and then you can find that you can sink a little bit further. So you're working with the body and with tissues. And again, you're waiting for that to give again, then you do it again. So that's developmental stretching. Not so much a downside, but you need to bear in mind, if you spend 8 hours, let's say for argument's sake, 8 hours a day driving or at a desk, and then you come 3 times a week, you do a bit of stretching on you, it's hardly going to compensate for 8 hours being short. So the key from a developmental stretching point of view, I'm going to keep on doing the chest, to be for any muscle, is regularity. Even if you're only doing small doses, 1 20-minute section, if every single time you get up from your desk, maybe your chair, whatever, you put the muscle on stretch. It's the regularity that's really key for that with developmental stretching. And as small and as often as you can. If only in the short term, what you're basically doing is, you like that for 8 hours, shortened position, you need to send signals to the brain, look, this is too tight, there's a problem here. So the more you can nag your brain, the more you can say, look, stretch it off and nag the brain that this muscle's too short, you need to do something about it. And eventually, because this is a slightly longer term thing, the brain will lengthen, stretch it off, and basically, more importantly, put more sarcomere, so it's physically lengthened. And that's the biggest difference with normal stretching, for want of a better word, and developmental stretching. You're literally developmental stretching, and you're literally trying to put more sarcomeres into the muscle. And the only way to do that, unfortunately, is regularity. Small, but regular. As regular as you possibly can. How often? How long is a piece of string, basically. Yin yoga is good for that. Almost any Pilates move you can turn into a developmental stretch. You just hold it there for longer. Whichever one of us is sore, you do different variations, so just hold it down there. So we normally use our breath to control the speed of a movement with almost any Pilates move. But just do it where you're holding it, not holding your breath, but holding the position. You do need to watch people for that, because when you do, especially developmental stretches or stretches in general, people have a tendency to hold the breath. So in a nutshell, that's developmental stretching. As to your normal stretch where you're holding there for a few seconds, you're holding for much longer. Again, I used to get very good results in 20 seconds, no more than 30 seconds. But again, if you want to develop that and go even further, you can do. And that's it on developmental stretching.